Set the meeting to order.
There we go.
Trying to drag it out there. So, welcome everyone. We'll start our meeting. If you could all rise, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you have a hat, please remove. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As I said, welcome everyone, and I will hear a motion to approve our agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll move right on to public comment, and Annie Hendricks is up first. Welcome. Yes. And I'll just remind everybody there's the 3-minute usual.
Well, good evening. No idea this is for LPOSD School Board, but I was in the neighborhood and I just want to say thank you. It's very simple. We have 3 children. One just graduated from Gonzaga, the other's a junior at University of Memphis, and our youngest will be a senior. And I thought, I am winding down. And I just want to say thank you. I'm on a Little Lamb School Board, and I know that's just a very small group of kids, but 2020, the spring of 2020, sleepless nights trying to figure everything out. I can't imagine, Tom in particular, what that time period was like. So I thank you for your leadership, and all of you. And if there's any teachers here, thank you, because I've seen my kids grow and learn, and they're responsible, independent adults now. So I just want to say thank you for all of it.
Here.
That's all I have.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Melinda Rossman.
I thought I was third. Somebody cancel?
Yeah, you got bumped up.
I'm Melinda Rossman, and I'm retiring as the principal lead educator at the Homeschool Academy. And I thought I wanted to reminisce on some experiences I have had in 21 years as a professional educator. 15 years I worked in the regular public education classrooms, and I found that we were really sucked into the data-hungry machine. And there was so much time collecting data, assessing data, testing kids, stressing out staff. And all you ever heard from administration is, don't let it stress you out. You know, and it's just such a wrong way to go about education. And truly, so much time is lost in building relationships. So much time is lost in testing, collecting data so that you can, assess it and analyze it and then move forward with it. It's a waste of time. In the last 6 years of my 21 years as a professional educator, I've had this unique opportunity to do education the way I dreamed it always should look. Parent engagement, parents responsible for aspects of education, parents engaged fully with their child's learning process, and then looking into the community, those families looking into the community and finding enrichment opportunities to build depth in their child's education. And at the Homeschool Academy, we were able to achieve this amazing, unique community of learners. And the power that is in that type of learning, I really believe is going to be the future of education in our nation and in other places in the world. But I think that what we've done here, it's still the only type of educational opportunity in this state, if not this nation, that provides a support service to families to help enrich and deepen the child's learning experience. And it's based on children telling you what they want to learn about and parents telling you what they want their children learning about, and then you facilitate giving it to them. You build the curriculum, you build the experiences, and the only assessment is 100% engagement. And if you see a child 100% engaged in a learning opportunity, they're learning. They're gathering that information and they're building that background and they're building those skills that'll last a lifetime. over, hey, I got an 80%. Oh, I only got 50%, right? We don't give grades at the Homeschool Academy. We give lifelong learning experiences that are built around true interests of the children. And we only assess on pure engagement. And the staff that I've worked with over the last 6 years are of the highest quality and the hardest working of any team of teachers I've ever worked with in my career. And I've been honored and I'm proud to have worked alongside them, and I'm going to miss them greatly. But thank you, Lake Conroe School District, for believing in the experiment, because it works and it is the future of education. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next is Sherry Tilford.
Hi, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Melinda just said, because I'm concerned about the future of the Homeschool Academy now that she's leaving. My first concern happened when her replacement was hired to not exactly replace her. As the principal, she's being replaced by a lead teacher, and that is concerning. There will be no training of the teacher while in session. She gets 1 week this summer for 8 hours, and she's been told, and we've been told, she's not going to be involved as a mentor in the fall, despite all involved in the program wanting that exactly. The parents, the teachers, and Melinda want that, and Melinda's offered to mentor as part of an extension of her services for the Lake Conroe School District, and she's been told no. So I'm very concerned that this lead teacher doesn't know quite what she's getting into, and the program has been built over 6 years with an amazing amount of dedication and energy that will be very hard to match. It feels like the Homeschool Academy is the bastard stepchild of the Lake Conroe School District that no one wants and everyone's ashamed of. We haven't had Tom Albertson visit our school once in the years he's been superintendent. We have been denied use of the high school and middle school auditoriums for our performances and have had to pay the Canada in order to do our plays. The school building is not regularly cleaned adequately, and our school is not included in district-wide events and fundraisers. The Homeschool Academy is loved by all the families who attend, and there's a constant wait list, so that clearly shows that it is important to our community. Homeschooling in general is on the rise. In the fall of 2020, in Idaho alone, it was up 28%. Nationwide, in 2021, the percent of households who homeschooled tripled. The national average of test scores for homeschooled kids is in the 87th percentile as compared to public school kids in the 50th percentile. The trend for homeschooling is a good one, and it will likely continue and grow. The Lake Conroe School District should be searching for ways to grow and improve the Homeschool Academy, not finding ways to ignore it. So I hope the new superintendent recognizes this trend and gives us the respect and attention we deserve.
Thank you. And Catherine Barlow. Hello.
There's not enough for everybody.
We'll share. Here, you guys can.
Yeah, so tonight I'm here to talk about curriculum. I've talked about curriculum before, and I think it's our topic tonight. Anyway, school curriculum and curriculum selection topics have been brought forward at past board meetings. I would like to bring it up again, as there hasn't been a response from the board to my knowledge. During the past school year, a committee has been reviewing new science curriculum. We'll hear about that tonight, I'm sure. For grades K through 5. I'm not aware how committee participants were selected, but there were, it seemed like, about 15 to 20 members, and a portion of them were parents of school children. As mentioned in a previous board meeting, it would be great to see parents who regularly attend school board meetings or participate in their children's classrooms be the parents on these committees. As I said, I don't know how they were chosen now. The curriculum review process may have been open to the public. I don't know, because I'm not sure how these meetings are advertised. I found out about the final review meeting by word of mouth and was able to attend most of it. At that point, the curriculum selection was nearly finalized. The group held this final meeting, which was a wonderful meeting, by the way, to gain consensus and consolidate input for their recommendation to the board. It was a good meeting, but not a forum for public input. A public viewing of the committee recommended curriculum was advertised only in the local paper to my knowledge. I also believe there was not much advance notice for it. I don't often read the paper and only found out about the meeting because I happened to call the school board office the morning of the first viewing. I was hoping to see the curriculum myself, and I was told there were only 2 viewing times offered, 4 to 6 that afternoon and 9 to 11 the following morning. Apparently, not many people knew about the viewing times. I was the only one who showed up at afternoon. Additionally, 2 hours, in my opinion, was not a sufficient time to review all the materials for teachers and children in each grade. A more thorough review would have made me more comfortable with what will be taught in classrooms. In my feedback to the curriculum team, I suggested there be a broader effort to inform the public and allow them to review new curricula. I suggested emailing parents, putting it on the website, sending home flyers, etc. That said, the timing of public review was so late in the process, I doubt it would make any difference to provide feedback at that point. Public involvement early on with the right parents and community members would be much more effective.
Thank you. And next we have Geraldine Meyer.
Hi, I'm Geraldine Meyer. I'm the post-secondary transition counselor at Sandpoint High School, and I wanted to report to the board that we just, about a week and a half ago, gave away $193,000 in local scholarships to just Sandpoint High School seniors. There are lots of other dollars that are dispersed between Priest River High School, homeschool students, Clark Fork, and LPO. I only keep track of the numbers for Sandpoint High School. But so Sandpoint High School students earned $193,000 from our bus drivers who actually raise money to give a scholarship to students who have ridden the bus at some time during their high school or their elementary, sometime to their K through 12. And then we also, a growing trend that we're seeing, which is exciting to us, there were $57,000 given away in continuing scholarships. So those are students that are in college or in a trade school or in a 2-year program at North Idaho College, and then came back and asked for scholarships. That pot is not as large, and so we're hoping to be able to grow that in the next, that's an area we're working to grow. But it's something that I think is just outstanding for our community, that it's just about $200,000 that was given away just to Sandpoint High School. I think you guys were in a huge, I think Clark Fork was 68,000. It's really amazing what opportunity we're able to provide for our students. And therefore programs for students that are going on to a 1 year, we have a student who's going on to be an automotive technician for a year program, 2-year, diesel programs, lineman, community college, as well as 4-year traditional college. So it's pretty exciting. So just wanted to report that back.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you to the Albertson family in honor of their scholarship for your dad, and thank you for all that you guys have done.
Nice. Tara Lob? Is it Tara or Tara? Sorry, I couldn't tell how to pronounce.
It's Tara. But
Tara.
that's okay.
Hi.
I'm here to talk about safety and security. So I'm Tara Lau, mother of 2 girls at Sagal, and my husband is an electrician for schools with double door entry and updated safety technology. I can tell you we are very behind with safety and security here compared to schools that are 35 minutes away in Hayden, Post Falls, and Coeur d'Alene. When I walked Sagal, the first thing I noticed was our front doors were unlocked and propped open. The first thing I asked is that door always like that? And the response was yes. I contacted the superintendent, Mr. Albertson, in January about concerns with safety. On June 1st, they announced that the doors would be locked. This is a great quick fix, but we need better camera systems, a PA system, a buzz and entry system, and playground fencing. As a community, the schools are the hub, and let's make sure that the hub is protected and so that the hubs don't become prayer memorials. I talked with Sheriff Schultz 2 weeks ago, and he said the first line of defense are lockdown and buzz-in systems. They have 3 sheriffs covering 7 schools. It could take 45 minutes for them to arrive at Sago Elementary. He said it's the school district's responsibility to make sure that they are secure, and the Sheriff's Forest Service, Fish and Game, Sandpoint PD, and federal police will arrive accordingly. As for gear for the police, we don't have funding for ballistic shields or SWAT. With the tragedy that has occurred in rural Texas, it only made this situation closer for me. A lot like Texas, our population is about the same at 16,000 people and 4,000 kids in their district. This took me a few days to process. Then the passion came, the effort to stand up here today has transcended for me. On behalf of people that are worried about perception, I decided that I would come here today. We can debrief the Texas situation for change here. LPOSD must do better. It's our time to reflect and reevaluate programs for safety, because no child or faculty member should have to lose their life. No door should remain unlocked. This is something we can control, safety first. People said goodbye and I love you for the last time at drop-off in Texas. Matthew McConaughey just spoke about going to Uvalde, his hometown, after the shooting. We talked about Alethea, a 10-year-old girl that wanted to go to art school in Paris. Her dad, a week before the shooting, landed a lineman job, and he told her, "Daddy can finally spoil you. Daddy will show you the world," but showing her the world isn't an option. Alethea, she wore green Converse high tops with a heart every day to school. The shoes were the only way they could identify her body because the exit holes were so big. You had to use DNA tests to even know, to identify each child. We do not want broken halos and folded wings. None of us want to have to identify a child, a grandchild, a godchild, a niece, or a nephew. We don't want homes to never be the same, to have empty beds, to not have laughter, to have shoes and backpacks and lunchboxes never used again. Let's secure the schools this summer. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will go on with the board meeting. We have our very first topic is school safety and security. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Albertson.
Thanks, Geraldine.
Yep.
Or Chair Lewis.
You're getting informal on your last meeting.
Yes, I am. What I wanted to do is spend a little time tonight to get the school board updated on what we currently have in place for safety, what we have in place for improving safety, and still work that needs to continue. Okay, and I think we were all unnerved with the incident that happened in Texas, and it's time for us to review this and make sure we are all understand what we currently are doing. Current practices and procedures. We do have our lockdown, safety hold, and evacuation protocols and drills. And I want to, I'm going to back out of this for a second and jump over. And it looks something like this. So there's basically 3 things that all of our staff and students train for. Whether or not we need to go into a lockdown, whether we go into a safety hold, and or whether we need to evacuate the building. In every classroom, and this is a very similar stage, but in every classroom there is a bottom part of this form here that basically has other information, important information. You are in room C11, your physical address it's listed here. So when if there's someone that needs to call 911, they have the identification of the exact room they're in here. So this is posted in every classroom in every school. If you have particular questions, I can go through this, but very much in general, I think most of you have seen this before. You know, a lockdown would be a situation where we're actually, and we'll talk about the signal of how we go into lockdown. But basically, if there is an intruder on campus, if there is some reason that we need to lock all doors, interior doors as well, and you can see here it's move away from the line of sight, maintain silence, do not open doors. If outside, leave the area. So, you know, and we've had trainings throughout the years, and a lot of the trainings are around, you know, move away, move towards. You don't want to, if you need to move towards. But we go through these trainings, and lockdowns are, you know, at minimum twice a year. Okay, and that's something that can be further discussion whether that needs to increase or not increase. Safety holds are more of there's something in the neighborhood that could be concerning or could cause a safety factor. And it could be a simple, not simple, but a moose is very common in Sandpoint. If there is an animal or something that's causing, you know, could be danger, we're not going to put kids out on a playground. You know, if there's police activity in the neighborhood, but it really isn't around the school or at the school, we would then have all doors locked, and we would not have students go to any exterior doors, and you would not pass to the next class until the safety hold is lifted. And then evacuation, and you know, we understand in historically, we all have to do a fire drill every month. Evacuation is just a fire drill. If there was a reason that we needed to evacuate further, then every school has a designated spot where they would evacuate to for bus pickup, and that is every school. And again, we do have some rural schools, so it's more challenging for some of our rural schools than some of our in-town schools. But I do want you to know that these are drills, and it is in place here. I also want to go through, just remind the board that we do have a school resource officer program. Also at Sandpoint High School, we have a separate campus security that's full-time there. That's our largest school. We do have security cameras at every school. We do have our lockdown beacons, so that is a beacon system that's on a clock that flashes and also has a voiceover telling students, staff that you're in a lockdown and where they need to go. And we do have a single point of entry, and you know, as you heard from one of the speakers, we haven't up to this point had every one of our single point of entries locked. We've had all the other exterior doors locked, but our single point of entry has not been, and that is something definitely up for discussion, for review, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. We also, on a, I believe every 3-year basis, have an Idaho State Safety Inspection Assessment Summary for each site, and that's from the Division of Idaho Safety. Let me see here. And we get a report, very thorough report at each site, and I'm not going to go into details here, but it school safety and security strength profile. It tells us where our strengths are and where there's some areas that we need to focus on. It does talk about intruder assessments. We actually have an individual from the safety that tries to come into our school unnoticed, and to see, are they stopped? Are the doors locked? Special unique conditions, and board members, if you would like to see these further, you know, it covers things that are fairly extensive here. So that is another part that happens on a regular basis. We do have an anonymous tip hotlines for reporting, which is very, very important. We have one for the district, and we have one separate at Sandpoint High School. That can be found, sorry, I'm jumping back and forth here. That can be found on the Lake Pend Oreille School District's website under Contact Us on the left-hand side. We have an anonymous report line, district-wide and Sandpoint High School only. And, you know, it's important, and in the very first slide is, you know, we're all in this together for school safety, and this isn't just a bullying harassment line, or but it also is security concerns, potential threats, and you know, when there is something, even if you think it may not be anything, it's important that things are notified, and we follow up on all of those. We also have we're in a very rural school district. We do have law enforcement presence, though, with the conjunction with the Sandpoint Police Department and Bonner County Sheriff's Office. They can't be there full-time all the time, but I do appreciate their presence in our around our schools. You know, and we are spread out from Clark Fork to Southside. The response time, you know, they will do their very best they can, but it is, you know, a challenge. And also, all our law enforcement has easy access to classroom keys. These are things that have come up, and I don't go into details of how that can occur, but I just want to let you know. And also, we did start, at least for Sandpoint Police Department, their dispatchers have access to all of our security cameras at every school, not just the city schools. So they actually, our IT department worked with their IT department, and if that's something that, you know, we do further with the sheriff's department, that's something that we could definitely work on. But you know, in the case of an emergency, dispatch then would take access and be able to look at the security cameras. So so those are some of the things that we have in place right now. Things that we're planning or are in progress is Matt Dill, maintenance director, has been working with an engineer doing assessments to secure schools' front entries, and also what our increased fencing needs would be. Dr. Meyer will be working with the director of the Idaho School Safety and Security in July, also getting an assessment at each school. And then also, I don't want to put, you know, too many words in your mouth, but also a school safety and security community task force will be created, and start dialoguing and have the community involved in that task force. So these are some of the things that will be happening very soon. So you know, the information that Matt will be collecting from an engineer that we work with on a regular basis then will be good information that Dr. Meyer will have, and then also will be information that the task force can look at too. So that's where we are right now. It's a very quick report on school safety, but I wanted to at least get you apprised. Are there any questions from board members on this presentation?
A little bit of what I understand is that we're working also on some budget conversations surrounding that.
Well,
and it'll sort of start with the,
yeah,
what do some of these things cost?
correct.
And then how can we work it into
Right.
our
And I don't,
future budget? So
we
those are deeper
do not have a
conversations.
report to share with you from the engineer that is working with the maintenance department right now, so I would
It's
be
too early for it. Yeah.
remiss to speak on that, but I do know what I think sometimes would be easy isn't, and I'll give you one example. For example, some of our older schools, looks like they had double doors at one time. And Sandpoint Middle School's that way, I believe Northside's that way, but come to find out that, so you thought, well gosh, we could just frame that back in and have double doors and have the second door's locked, and then we can look and see, okay, what's it going to cost to have a keypad system and a buzzer system?
Oh,
Those
you mean
are
like a foyer, like there's
right,
two sets of
but
doors. I see.
when they built those, they're not ADA compliant. There's not enough
Oh, right.
distance now, according to Matt Deal. So again, it's not as simple as that.
not a quick fix.
You know, if we were to be building a new school right now, I'm sure our design would be much different than some of the designs of our schools, you know, where the office is in the inner part of the school away from the front door. In today's world, we're going, why would we want that? We would want the office right there, where if we had a buzzer system, we could give people access.
Right.
You know, and as happened also, it's training staff, because you know what happened in Uvalde was they may have had all their doors locked, okay, and that is a good deterrent, and I think it's something we need to work towards. But if you know, if there's human error there and some of the back doors aren't locked, then it doesn't really matter. So I mean, there's always a combination of training, but to be, again, I'll tell you one part I didn't put in the presentation, but school safety is really centered around the community being aware of just anything that might be amiss, or somebody who may be having some struggles, and making sure that we report that, and that we're preventative in that. So. So there will be immediate work in July that will continue on that.
Okay.
Any other questions right now?
Thank you for that presentation.
I think I'm always more concerned about, is it proactive and preventative versus reactive? And so I'm excited, I guess, to see that the community involvement and that people are going to become more participants in this together. Hopefully, it sounds like with the task force, that'll be awesome. I know we have just an amazing level of expertise in our community. I hear what you're saying with the single point of entry and buzzing people in. My professional world, we had to allocate money and determine if we could afford a buzzer system. And it was a huge sort of contention, I guess, at that particular time. I really hope that we all can work together and come up with some really great proactive and preventative solutions and make this the priority that it needs to be. Yeah. It's
I think
scary.
that we need to find them, like whatever
gotta find
it is.
it.
We got to find them. Like
Move the money
there's
from
no
one-
amount
yeah.
of money that is
Yeah.
too much to ensure that our students and staff are safe.
Yeah.
And we have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and make sure that we're doing the right things moving
Yeah.
forward, and
Yep.
and make it that way.
Yes.
Big task.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Superintendent Albertson. We will come back to that conversation, but for now, we're going to go on to the first reading of policies, and I will pass it on to our clerk, Kelly Fisher.
Okay.
Policy 10.
So you have actually 3 policies in front of you for first reading. Per trustees' discussion in policy 1010 and 1205, there's added language to include the U.S. Constitution. I put this language in, but it's up to you guys to discuss the placement, the location within each policy, if you like it there, the wordsmithing it, how you see fit. And then policy 2425, which is parental rights. We've seen that in front of you before. There have been no edits or changes to this policy since the last workshop that you discussed this.
Are we gonna look at each one of these separately, or?
Well, the first two that she mentioned, 1010 and 1205, are very simple statements. And before we move on, this is not the meeting where we approve it, but if each of you have a chance to look at the placement, like she said, and the wording, does that meet with approval for a first reading? Or do you need to recommend any changes to Kelly? I found those both to be a satisfactory inclusion of statement.
Yeah, I think they're pretty darn close. What makes me nervous is some of the wording might leave doors open for stupid executive orders from certain people that make them that we would have to follow. And I don't know if those things would be left out in this verbiage, you know, outside of the U.S. Constitution being the sole law of the land. Does that
Are
make
you
sense?
saying like you're worried that the Constitution gets
Would be
amended?
superseded because of an
Oh, I see what you're saying.
executive order.
I see what you're saying.
And if, like the wording of 1010, the board must also comply with the constraints and requirements of federal law and administrative rules, as well as those of the U.S. Constitution.
Well, some of that is an obligation we have as a public school.
Right.
So in a certain sense, we can't write our own language to only accept the laws that we like because we're bound by law.
That specific paragraph was written by our attorneys. There wasn't, I mean, to add that's a legal statement.
Just as long as we know that it has to be law, not an executive order.
Right.
What happens if you like the executive order? Then we can
I say we still don't comply with it. It's not a law.
Okay.
Whether I like it or not. The Constitution is
That's in
supreme,
agreement.
right?
Well, this is the first reading, and if there are recommended changes, I'm not asking for any vote tonight. First reading is for our approval, so that when we see this as a second reading, we're in a position to yay or nay it.
Okay.
I would ask from the board on these two, is there any work that you would want us to do further research on, or not, if there are any questions?
I do not have any complaint with the way it's worded here, and I will read it since it's the added phrase, the board must also comply with the constraints and requirements of federal law and administrative rules as well as those of the U.S. Constitution. Also, it discusses our legal powers, duties, responsibilities derived from the Idaho Constitution. So there's some things we don't have flexibility on as an Idaho public school. The second is 1205, requiring, it includes Idaho Constitution and U.S. Constitution as the two examples for state and national levels of government, recognizing those authorities.
And maybe you can say, just a suggestion, instead of such as, maybe to include the Idaho Constitution and U.S. Constitution. I mean, you guys could wordsmith that as
I
a
like
board.
that. You're smart.
To include.
To include.
It's more like a direct
It is.
order rather than a recommendation.
Uh-huh.
To include.
So the such as would become to include.
Okay.
How about instead of that, state and national levels of government per the Idaho Constitution and U.S. Constitution, instead of to include?
I'm sorry, Trustee Decker, if you could repeat that. If you would like to give
Took
me a
out to
suggestion.
include and said per.
Oh, per? Okay.
Per the Idaho
Per the
Constitution.
Idaho
and
Constitution and
actually,
US
I do like that. It
Okay.
definitely is more specific.
Perfect.
Are there any other recommended adjustments to this for the first reading? Then I'll move on. And so the third one you were talking about is the parental rights, all new content, but has not been edited since the last time we saw it.
And I just, to
And
take
now-
a minute to review that with the board,
Yes.
since it's been since March. And I wanted you to understand that we tabled it in March to see if there was any new, anything with dealing with parental rights that came out of the legislative session, so that we wouldn't be having an outdated board policy immediately. And there was not. So this is the first reading for Board Policy 2425. And I want you to understand that these are parental rights that are in place. We're not making these up, but what we're trying to do is be as transparent as possible and putting them in one board policy in one place. And that was feedback that we got from the public in the sense that, well, but one of it's here and one's here and one's here. So we're trying to be transparent. And what I have highlighted here is simply just a real quick paraphrase. I will not read this to you, but it does tell us that, we have to adhere by the laws, rules, and regulations, the Constitution of the State of Idaho, and the Idaho rules of the State Board of Education. I'm just saying, since we have them in the other, do the other policies supersede that so that the U.S. Constitution doesn't need to be in this as well, or does the U.S. Constitution need to be in this one? That would be the language there, but you can think about that. But really, the parental rights that we have. A student's parents or guardian has the right to reasonable academic accommodations. Parent guardian would like to request reasonable academic accommodation. The appropriate avenue for the parents or guardians to first seek to address the concerns through the communication with the child's teacher, then the building administrator, followed by the superintendent. Parent or guardian who has an objection to their child's participation in the district's adopted curriculum and or implementation of practices, policies, or procedures may have an alternate assignment, and this kind of explains how you go about that. And then access to learning material. Parents and guardians are entitled to review all learning materials, instructional materials, and other teaching aids used in the classroom of their student. Parent or guardians can request access to the learning materials by contacting their child's teacher and or school's administration during school hours. And then the emergency order that was put in place here, at no time shall the existence of any order, proclamation, or declaration issued pursuant to Chapter 6 or 10, Title 46 Idaho Code, should be considered essential to further a compelling government interest to justify forced medical action on a child, forced removal of a child from a home, or the violation or the interference with the parent's fundamental and established rights protected by the Idaho Parental Right Act. So at this point in time, and if the Idaho legislation does put further parental rights in, then this would need to be updated. So,
If that Idaho code changed.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
We had some discussion on this previously, but it's been a while, so I would open it up for board questions if you have any.
I think one of the main discussion points, wasn't it, about the order in which a parent was to address something? It almost reads like they have to go to the teacher, then administrator, then superintendent, then the board. Where, did we discuss the wording on that changing where they are obviously are allowed to come and address us as the board? And
I think the
I
proper
just don't
protocol
remember.
would be for a parent, and we're talking about parents' rights here. And I think the difference between parent rights and a community member who may not have any children in the school. So there's a difference there. So it's a parent, if they truly have a question, I always think, personally, I'm always saying, it's always best the communication to happen at the least common denominator. Right. So if I really wanted to know what a question was, I would go straight to the teacher first. And then if they didn't feel that they got the answer from the teacher, then go to the building administrator. And if the building administrator still couldn't answer the question, then you would go to the superintendent. So I think that chain, whether you call it chain of command or whatever, but the teacher having that dialogue and having that open relationship with the parents is key. I mean, that's where we, personally, I mean, I'm retiring, but I would always like to have things solved at that level, because that is impacting the student learning as much. For that parent to have that open dialogue with that teacher is so important. And I think that's why it's there.
This statement in here that addresses what you're talking about is, should that avenue not resolve the situation, a parent or guardian is free to address such concerns with the Board of Trustees in conformance with board policy regarding public participation at board meetings. So it's in there as the option if that other avenue of conversation is not going to work for whatever whatever reason, the scenarios are different for every single situation, so. So it's sort of I
think it's also important to just recognize, I get reached out to by constituents that have an issue that I know for a fact, because they tell me they didn't go to the teacher. Like, hey, this is what's going on. And so it's not like we say, hey, go, no, you need to go talk to the teacher. We answer questions and do what we can. So I think it's not a one-size-fits-all for sure, but this is
at least
good.
It lets the parent know what is the starting point for them in the most broad sense.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, a parent's partnership in their student's education is key. If the student's going to be successful, the more parent involvement, the better.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Are there,
if this is something that parents, this particular document is something that people feel is really important, then I am supportive of it. Personally, I think it's redundant to policies already in place. I think this is what I said last time.
Yeah,
it's redundant.
it's a compilation.
It is a compilation, and the question I have is it necessary to have a whole new policy, or do we need a reference resource link that basically has these, and you could put parental rights to the care and custody, Idaho Parental Rights Act above them, because that's what this is referring
I think
to.
the point is to prevent people who want to see it in having to
space.
jump link to link to link, and that's
Right.
very cumbersome for people.
Sure, so wouldn't it be easier to have this be as a resource link?
Well, I think it's been brought to our attention that, hey, a parental bill of rights document is important to us. So this is
So if
the
it's
effort to say, okay,
Right.
here we go. Here's all this stuff in a,
So
in
this
a
is important.
single space.
If this is important, I'm completely in support of it.
It is.
And then we need to make sure then that every time one of any of these other laws change, that we have enough information that's accurate in this parental rights and it's consistent. And my
Change
concern is
all the way through.
when I look at all of the policies that we have currently in place, I think we have perhaps too many policies. And that if we removed a bunch of the language and just had easy to read reference sheets, that's more useful. So I'm just, again, asking the question, are we doing the right level of policy and documentation? However, Tom, if this is something that the public and our parents have brought to our attention, then absolutely I'll support it.
My only recommendation to the board is to make sure that all policy is backed up by Idaho code. And so to me, as long as we're not putting something in policy that's not backed up by Idaho code, to me, that's where it becomes dangerous. So as long as we're talking, for example, the emergency order part here is backed up by Idaho code 321014, and that's why we put that in there. So, the other parts, you're right, were already in place somewhere else, but we didn't have this until it became Idaho code, and that's how we want to make sure that's there. I don't have a strong preference. I always want what's easiest for parents to find it and be as transparent as possible, and that's why we decided to put it in one place.
So the feedback I got is that it's still legalese and it's not easy to understand. And so they would like to be able to know where it's being referenced from rather than just a listing.
So to paraphrase it, so it's not written, and every time you reference something back to Idaho code is written that way in a legalese way.
Right.
And then if it's my interpretation on it, then that gets a little dangerous too, and that's where I want to make sure that we're following Idaho code, not, oh, well, Tom interpreted it wrong, and this was his paraphrase of it.
But this is a paraphrase of this that you have to then find.
Right,
So
right.
this is basically a reference sheet that's now a policy.
Yeah.
So again,
Kelly-
we're just redundant. But
Kelly, you've done a lot of work on policies.
So
do you
for
have any
example,
suggestion?
Tanya, the emergency order is verbatim of code.
Yep.
That's identical of what that 331014 looks like.
Exactly. So that's where I'm saying that maybe it should just be a reference sheet and say this can be referenced here and not have a whole new policy towards it. But again, it's whatever our public and our
So-
parents think is the easiest.
When I get parents that call the district office and are asking about A, B, C, or D, they want to see a document and not be sent to code. They want to see Lake Pend Oreille School District's policy on the matter.
So they want a policy versus a reference sheet.
Yes.
I feel like over the past year, we've been hearing both here at school board meetings and in emails from parents an interest in actually seeing policy titled parental rights. And does it mean that every time Idaho code changes, we have to go in and
Yes.
update? Yes. That already happens to a certain degree. There's a lot of cross-referencing every time a policy changes. It trickles through.
So is this, we've read it, we sent it out and had feedback. Did we take the feedback received and put that into here?
We saw all that feedback as part of our conversation in March. I recall that we had all of that, and there were pages and pages.
Yep.
So some of that, not everything we saw has come into the final.
Okay.
So in answer to your question, we have had eyes on all that, and some of it's reflected right here.
I don't see what the harm, we definitely heard from constituents who voiced concerns about, why are you making a policy when there's already Idaho code that establishes all of this? Well, I'm of the opinion of, okay, there's no harm in outlining that in a policy of here's what we do in this district and it's backed up by this code. If those constituents that don't want there to be a policy for that, then that's fine. They don't have, but for those that do want a
So is this
singular, concise place to go and find
Right.
these documents, which is that's the overwhelming stuff that I heard is like, hey, I don't want to go to 17 different places. I want to know what the parental rights are in one place, which of course is going to reference code. It's going to send people into different
Right, I
locations,
just,
but-
again, as a parent, if I walk in the door, I would like to have, a reference sheet, which this is, which is great.
Certainly.
And is this the most useful way to do that? That's all I'm asking. So reference versus policy, we're going to go with policy, because it sounds like that's what our parents want. So we have looked at all that feedback, and is this the easiest, most consistent, simplest way to do that? That's all I'm asking.
Well, we could in theory make reference sheets of every policy, correct?
I know, but this is
And basically
important.
throw them all out and just make reference sheets of everything.
Good.
So if we're not gonna do that, then why not have a policy and a reference sheet?
Totally.
Right.
I don't see the harm in it for sure.
That was
Personally.
my thought.
Is there any, Pearlie, I can't tell if you're wanting to get a word in.
I'm listening.
Excellent.
Well, this is a first reading, so.
Yeah.
That's right. This is a first reading.
When did this 32-10-14 actually take place? Wasn't it this last winter? Or
It was before this
Yeah, it
legislative
was last.
It was 2021.
2021.
Yeah, I think the
And-
biggest reason that this is important is to have this here is that number one, forced medical action of a child. I think most of the parents wanted
That's
to
when
know
it came to the forefront
that
of
their
parents'
kids
minds.
will not be forced to do anything without their consent or
Right.
whatever, whatever falls under that. And I think that was the main reason for a parental rights policy.
It was definitely what shed attention on
Yeah.
the need for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a good response to that request from parents.
Right.
So,
And I think that this policy would be a great piece of paper to put in that parent's handbook that every parent gets.
It's not that-
They've got it. It's right there in their handbook.
And if nothing else, to let them know that we know these are your rights. You know what I mean? Like we're on your side, in
Yeah,
a way, up front.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question is are we sure that this really represents everything in the easiest way for parents to understand and read it? Because if we're going to do this and we are going to put it out, because I think it's a great, again, here's what's really important and here's what we're communicating before we go to the next reading.
If there's something that, I guess, just if I could give a suggestion, if we were going to put it into a handbook, maybe then it should be written as, if you have a, maybe it's as a Q&A. What would I do if I wanted to know what my student was learning? And then you'd say, please contact your student's teacher. I mean, that would be a simple way that you would put that would be referencing this panel, but then maybe it would be a Q&A for parents.
Outside of the legalese part.
Right.
You mean for the handbook
For the
application?
handbook part of it. Yeah. And not just put this in the handbook and say, oh.
I think we need both then. I mean, 'cause again, I'm looking at it from a parent standpoint, and I get this and I want to read it, understand it. How do I use it? So if we're doing it in a handbook with a Q&A, let's do that in
So
addition.
if I recall, that's sort of starts at administrative level at each school. The handbooks do.
Correct.
And then
And remember,
comes
the
before
board
us.
reviews the
Yes.
handbook.
But we don't necessarily draft it.
No, you do not
Yeah.
draft it.
That would be the task at the administrative level.
And then I guess my only other question is, up above, before emergency orders, everything is just a discussion or summary. Then we have under emergency orders, chapter 6, chapter 10. Should we say, instead of it's a portion of, concerned with, all of a sudden we're inconsistent with the rest?
We ran this by our legal team, and they felt that we should put it in its entirety in there.
So we'll put the whole chapter 6, title 46?
No,
Or a summary of that, or just it's concerned with?
it's just more of a reference to
reference
that.
within
It's
there.
saying if you're looking at those issues, you have to go to chapter 6, title 46.
I see what you're saying. So we're putting the actual legal reference to the emergency order under that one, but not under the other ones? I mean, I'm just wondering if we want to be consistent, and instead of having this list, if this is it, put refer to, then you know where you're looking for it at. Does that make sense?
No, I do not
Okay,
know what
so
you're asking.
At the very end, it has the
Yeah.
list, right? Legal
Right.
references. Everything above it on this sheet, I'm assuming is going with one of these.
Well, not
Why-
necessarily. I mean, that's
Right.
where the code.
But emergency orders, we have that, and then where to look for it. Why don't we have where to look for it be consistent in the
We
rest of it?
can remove chapter 6, title 46, chapter 10, title 46, and list them under our legal references.
It just helps call them out as part of the emergency order paragraph.
And that was so new to everybody, I think that's why it was there.
Chapter 6 and chapter 10.
It's just clarifying what chapter 6 and chapter 10 are,
Right.
right?
What they concern with.
What they're,
Right.
what they're concerning.
But what I'm asking is the ones above it, access to learning materials, which reference or law or code goes to that one?
I think,
One of these.
correct.
Right, so why don't we put those up with the one that it applies to?
Up in the words?
I'm confused.
Okay, the structure for all our policies, though, is exactly as you see it, the cross-referencing and the legal references at the end. You're saying you want to see them in two places. You want it up in the paragraph as well as listed at the end.
Or, it just, to me, it's inconsistent within a policy.
But these two, chapter 6 and chapter 10 of Title 46, they are part of Idaho Code 32-1014,
Concerned
issued pursuant to chapter 6 or 10, Title 46. That's why it's right there, and only right there.
Right.
And we're specifically addressing emergency orders. Like that.
Yeah, that one
that's
is a
part
different-
of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that
I see
we seem to be going in two different ways. It's like, oh, we don't want the policy, but now we want the policy more.
It's because
more
we're putting
complex.
so many things in one as a parent, and then I have to figure out which one of these 10 applies to that particular sentence if it's one or more. I mean, is there a way to put like a little A and then an A here, or 1, 2, like a way to be able just to coordinate it so it's really easy to see and be able to go and find it? Is there a way, so take the first one. Parents and guardians and students are expected to abide by district practices, da 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 da. Can we put like, rather than having it on there twice, like you said, Geraldine, put like a little 1 and then a little 1 by which code specifically goes with it? And again, I'm just trying to make it as simple as
I think it's,
possible.
I think you're making it more complicated.
Does it?
I think you're complicating the conversation, but but that might be because I'm having trouble
Follow it,
tracking.
yeah.
With
I'm wondering
where you're going with that.
I'd
I
love
think
to
it
get-
makes sense the way it's done, where
Okay.
the rights are outlined, and then there's references if you wanted to dial deeper.
Okay, but a parent has to know which one to dial deeper into,
Well,
and they
but-
don't. They'll have to look at all 10 of them to figure out which applies.
No, because if you look at the heading of whatever the Idaho code is, you're going to go, okay, this is about excusing children from instruction in sex
Right.
education.
32.
You're going to go to that one.
Yeah, it's
But
10,
what if it's
11
more
is
than
about-
one?
Then that's up to the, like,
Okay.
I don't think we can, I don't-
Then
Okay.
we can't do the researcher's job for them.
so I know.
All the time.
I want to recommend that sleep on it a
I'll
little
sleep
bit.
on it,
See
yeah.
if that makes
first reading.
If there is a sense in which you want to put it into an email to our clerk
Yeah.
that is a little more concise. None of us were quite on the same wavelength, but that doesn't mean there's not a good,
I'm trying
not
to-
a good way to make what you're trying to express.
So what I'm trying to express is there a way to make the policy as simple as possible so that anybody can read it and find it just simple? And that's my only
I think
concern.
this is as simple as it
I think
can
we
get.
all think this is
And
simple.
we can do
But
a
if-
Q&A, maybe, we could work on a Q&A.
I think we need
This
one
is
if
what-
we're going to do
Okay,
that. Because
okay.
it's for the
All
parent's
right.
view,
Okay.
not for an attorney's view.
Got it.
Theoretically.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Okay, we're going to move on. Superintendent Albertson, we have a radio rental,
Right.
and you're going to give us a little update on
Yeah,
that.
I will. A lot of community members have asked over the years, what are these big towers doing next to some of our schools? And some of these, and there's nothing on them. When the internet first came out in the late 90s or whenever we had that, there was a company that built all these towers. They've abandoned them. They're very expensive to remove, and they are just there. A local FM radio station has asked, would we want to, and there's not a specific location, but could we rent out one of those towers for them to broadcast? And I did double check, it is an FM, it's not 5G, it's nothing like that, next door school. It would be an FM radio transmitter on one of the towers. And we don't have any other information at this time of which school, what location. It kind of depends upon how it would broadcast out. There's still some preliminary parts
How many
there.
are there out there? Like how many?
How many towers?
Yeah.
Boy, Matt, can you help me with towers? I don't.
5 to 7, I'd have to count them up real quick for
That
you.
are on LPOSD
Different school
campus.
properties.
They are. And they're asking for only one, correct?
They just want to use one. They're losing their current rental of a tower right over here by Walmart because the property's sold and they're building apartment housing there, and they're really in a bind and need housing, and they're willing to compensate the district for reasonable rental rate that will reimburse for utilities and that.
So it'd be at no cost and actually some gain to the district.
They'll be responsible for all the maintenance of the tower. I think it's a good, my thought is it's a good community service to work with the local radio station.
Yeah. So anyway, it's not an action item. I just wanted you to be aware of that request.
My One question is, have we looked at legal? Is this something we even have the legal authority to do? We haven't done it in the past.
I can check on that.
Are you saying, do we have the legal authority to grant somebody a lease to that?
Yeah,
Well,
to give that lease.
I would think so. It's our property.
And then what's the,
What we choose,
what is, right.
I believe. Yeah.
I don't have any other questions, objections. I just want to make sure it's all within our,
Okay.
Is
Madam
one-
Chair, we have the legal authority to do that.
okay. There.
Thank you, Lisa.
I just checked for us.
Thanks for checking on that.
Thank you.
That was quick. Anything else?
Okay, nope. Thank you, and I'm going to move right into the short recap of the ISBA Leadership Institute. We had 2 of our trustees and our clerk attend, and there's 30 seconds each allotted for this.
Well,
Go ahead, Trustee.
go ahead with the legal side there.
Like you mentioned, myself, actually Dr. Meyer and Trustee Decker and Trustee Sherman attended this Leadership Institute. It really covered a broad general view, mainly of governance, policy, and board norms and protocols. So my biggest takeaway was probably within some new policy changes from the state legislature.
Yeah.
And my takeaway, I thought it was really designed for new trustees, clerks, and superintendents, and they did a great job with it. And there were several of us that have experience that were able to also put in our experience and that. But I thought it was really great for new trustees and superintendents and clerks.
Great.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing as a new trustee having a room full of experts, untold numbers of years of experience, being able to give direction. It was a great opportunity. I really appreciated the in-depth discussion on open meeting law.
Yeah.
That was really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
As you can tell, I'm kind of a policy junker, so I was digging on that. And really talking about what the responsibilities of a trustee or board member are and how important that is, and what we need to do to make sure that we're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And I'll add on to what I said, that the majority of the attendees were brand new.
That's good. Yeah. Well, thank you for going and representing us. Thank you. Kelly? Moving on, I will hear approval of consent agenda. A motion?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyone?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes.
I was trying to let you guys get on the
I know.
scoreboard over there.
Get your name in the meeting minutes.
I'm waiting until the night.
So we're going to move on. We have a whole slew of action items, and we are going to start with the K through 5 science curriculum recommendation. And I will invite Andra Murray, our Director of Teaching and Learning, and her team. Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much. We are thrilled to be here sharing the recommendation on the field committee for kindergarten and 5th grade science. And I have with me our instructional coach, Lisa McElroy,
Hello.
our teammate in teaching and learning, Lisa Walford, and then Steve and if you are on the science committee, we're going to take turns sharing the podium. But thanks. We had 18 members of this committee, not all of whom could be here tonight, but we have teachers and parents here that are going to take turns on some slides coming up. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
In terms of background, we can move to the next. We just wanted to give you a quick update for how we came to be here this spring. Again, on the next slide, it'll show that our committee had 18 teachers and parent reps. We are here to make our recommendation to the board. So as in a curricular process, we try out instructional materials, we work as a committee, and then we bring forth our recommendations. And a little bit of background work that happened we did survey all of K-6 staff, and they identified really science as their next needed material. You may know that we were watching and sort of waiting for the legislative session to finish. So math standards, ELA, and science standards were all signed off this spring. So we quickly got to work looking at instructional materials. That happened. You probably know also that in the state of Idaho, we have a required state science assessment in grades 5, 8, and 11. And I wasn't in this position, none of us were the last time science was looked at. But from the records, the science materials were copyright 2006. So it looks like that was the last formal purchase. So we're very excited to be here sharing our recommendations to engage students in science.
Hey, Andrea?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question? Can you just quickly elaborate, like, how did you guys come up with your committee to look at this and go over it?
So we called first for interested teachers and wanted to make sure we had all grade levels represented in all schools.
Okay.
And then we reached out to those teachers, the principals, and the PTA groups. And so typically finding reps who were interested from those schools, from the grade levels impacted by the curriculum.
Okay.
Then we called to have our committees formed. So typically that's been administrative, but we work through the teachers, the principals, and the PTO groups.
And those teachers selected the community people?
Teachers, principals, or PTOs would recommend who might be interested, and then we reached out to them to give them the dates and let them know that our committee was starting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you like us to hold questions to the end, or
Sure.
just in case it's something that comes up? Okay.
So we can go to next. That's just a little bit of background. We wanted to tell you about our process because we are asked this quite a bit as well. On the next slide, it will show you that we defer to the Idaho State Department of Ed. So really this is their position statement on science, and that really guided a lot of our work, that we wanted to find developmentally appropriate science instruction for all kids, guided by well-trained and well-informed instructors. So as you saw, it's been since 2006, so we're pretty excited to bring an update to you. But that we really do work off of the guidance of our Idaho State Department of Education. And this was the process that we followed. We used this slide quite a bit. So first, we learned together about the standards. And the parents, I know, really kind of appreciated having Lisa's expertise and a morning where we just dove into what's taught K-5. And she really gave us a briefing from the legislative session, what was updated, what does science look like in kindergarten through 5th grade. It was pretty fun just to sit as a group and share what is taught. And again, that isn't picked by LPOSD, that's picked by our State Department of Education. And they gave us some great tips moving forward, asking us to maybe come to PTO meetings, come out to the schools, lay out the standards. So we're happy to do that. That was a really powerful process. So we learned about the standards together. We looked at curricular options, and then we'll dive into this process in our presentation, but we also evaluate the resources on a rubric, a scoring guide that comes from the State Department of Education. So again, we look at what all districts in Idaho are looking for in curriculum. So we really use their document, and we think that's important to share with you. You'll see pictures of the team collaboratively scoring materials. So we went out, we used the word pilot, but we use that a lot to mean we took materials, tried them out in classrooms with our students and our kids. And they took lots of photos and work samples to share with you. And then we're bringing our decision here tonight. I also think it's important to highlight, I forgot, that we facilitate, but we don't vote. So the voting members were the teachers and the parents. And again, I mentioned we wanted to make sure, even though there's 18 representatives on this group, that we were really speaking for our K-5. We surveyed K-6. All the teachers, so you can see just a snapshot, all the teachers in our district are surveyed about their science needs. And what they told us really kind of informed what we were looking for. So on the bottom, they talked about, I know it's hard to read, I'll read a couple, that their greatest barriers were first just having the state set the standards. So we really went to work once those were signed off. Two, that they needed more instructional time. It's hard at elementary where we are generalists that teach all the content areas. They needed some short, kind of time-conscious lessons. And then that they wanted hands-on student materials to engage kids in science. So we think we brought you a proposal that has short, doable lessons, but also some full hands-on experiences. So what we looked for was really driven by a staff survey. And again, I kind of headed right here. We set out to find a computer-based program that would have short mini lessons or on-demand access to all the Idaho content standards, but then to make sure that we had at least one full comprehensive unit. Science companies will call it a kit, but that we did a full unit where all of the hands-on things came with the materials, so teachers don't have to buy those out of their own pocket or go out and prep those. So that survey really drove what we were looking for. So Lisa's going to tell you a little bit more about our process, and then teachers are going to highlight what they love.
Awesome. It is an absolute pleasure to share this part of the process as a facilitator. The first thing I want to start with is thanking our committee, because the amount of work, perseverance, problem solving, creative outside of the box thinking that's required in this process, it's so complex, and it's just been an honor to link arms with our expert team and be part of that. And as a 20-year veteran science teacher, science is important to me, but also as a mom of 3 kids in the LPOSD school district, teaching and learning has always been important as well. And so I can stand before you confidently saying that our team has really kept a strong research base in mind. They've kept teaching and learning in mind, parent voice in mind, and most importantly, their students in mind through this whole process. So I want to begin through step 1 at the bottom there. We wanted to start by building a really robust foundation. And so we did that through diving into the Idaho State standards as a team, diving into the 3D framework, kind of the research base that supports that, and then also gathering input from our parents and teachers. So on the next slide, this is kind of what that process started like. We gave a copy of the Idaho Content Standards hot off the press in January to both our teaching and parent teams. And we dove into an example of this is what a 2nd grade standard looks like. Students who demonstrate understanding can develop a model to represent the shapes and kinds of lands and bodies of water in an area. So the standard in black and white is a little bit ambiguous. And so the standard development has a very strong research base through the National Research Council, and it's built around what we refer to as a 3D framework. We've used a 3D stool as a reference for this, but that's the image in the middle. The idea is that science investigation, if it's rich and meaningful, it starts with a central phenomenon, or a wondering, or a question, or an observation about the world. So for example, why is Lake Pend Oreille shaped like an ear? Why are the green monarchs so deep in comparison to the Path River Flats? And so it starts in the middle, that pink area, with this real authentic observation or a question. And then to enhance that experience, the yellow, the orange, the disciplinary core idea is what do you know about that topic? The blue, the science and engineering practice, is what can you do with that topic, the action, the verb. And then the green, the cross-cutting concept, is what is the framework of thought that you have? And so when you apply that research base to the standard, you can see that that framework is actually built right into the standard. And this is great. This is great teaching and learning and a great robust model for science. But the part that's missing in this process is the voice of our teachers and the voice of our parents. So on the next slide, this kind of is an all-encompassing visual of what that looks like. In the center, we have this rich research base of what teaching and learning looks like in science. But then around it, the voice of our teachers. We want a high level of cognitive engagement. And really that means hands-on, but also minds-on. We want our students to not only have phenomenon-driven, but when possible, we want the phenomenon to be local to Northern Idaho. We want this process to be driven by the Idaho content standards. Our parents really want hands-on doing. We want our students to be active participants in their learning, a real-life application, and some community engagement to include a field trip to maybe the Path River Flats to experience that phenomenon. So this visual captures kind of the great vision of what the foundation looked like before we even started to explore curriculum options. All right, so step 2 in the process was the actual exploration of curriculum. Our committee decided to put 4 programs kind of head to head. We wanted a computer adapted program with on-the-go lessons that were easy for teachers to implement whenever, however. And so we put 2 computer adapted programs head to head, but then we also really wanted to acknowledge that we want an in-depth investigative experience for every child at every grade level, and so we wanted to put 2 kit programs head to head. And then we took those programs, and just like you would try on a suit jacket to see if it fit right, it might be a great jacket, but if the fit isn't right, you're never gonna wear it. So we went and took those programs into classrooms and piloted that process and came back to score. So let's dive into maybe what that looked like. This is just a visual of what the pilot process looked like. What I want you to notice in, no worries. What I want you to notice in these pictures is the activity that's happening, the hands-on focus. So whether you're piloting any program, whatever the program was, our focus really was the hands-on doing of science. During this process, our parent reps were invited to come in and observe and assist in the classroom if they wanted to. If their schedules didn't allow that, we asked our teachers to take photographs. That's where these came from. Teachers also collected artifacts, student work samples, so that we could bring all this information back to our committee and start to kind of analyze it and take it apart and see how it went. All right, so after the pilot process and we came back together, we thought it would be interesting to just ask our teachers sort of how did the code fit kind of a question. So without any scoring, without any discussion, what's just your first impression? And interestingly, even our parent reps, primary teachers K2, and intermediate teachers 3-5, with our computer-based program, we had a near majority for mystery science. And for our kit-based program, we had a near majority for Carolina Biological. So despite this advantage, this seemingly like win, we really wanted to still objectively score each program so that we would have some evidence to support this first impression. So on the next slide, you can see that we use the State Department of Education's 3D rubric as an objective measure of each program. It had 3 criterion explaining the phenomenon, the 3 dimensions, and then also assessment. So this is the document that we used to evaluate the evidence to support the strength of each program. On the next slide, and this is where my science background comes in, we literally dissected each program. We had an idea of what we liked at this point, but now we had to provide the evidence. We had to really dive into the program to find the evidence to support, again, that impression. So this started with the teachers sharing a brief overview of the program, how it worked, sharing photographs and work samples, and then moving into discussions at tables, grade level tables, but then as a discussion as a team, so as a complete K-5 program discussion. And then we went into the collaborative scoring process, which was a pretty lengthy process, pretty robust. Our teachers were incredible through this, true experts. And then we got to the point where, through a secret vote, the selection was revealed and then we shared it with the group. And so the next slide shows that through that process, the selection was mystery science as a comprehensive computer-based program for all students, all standards. But then, and this is where it's really incredible because this is something the committee developed themselves to enhance that with one Carolina Biological kit at every grade level. So on the next slide, let's just scratch the surface on what is mystery science? Why did we pick it? So you can see the scoring process over here on the right-hand side of the screen. Again, primary, intermediate, and parents all voted. And after the scoring process, our entire committee reached 100% consensus with mystery science. The next slide kind of details out kind of the goal of mystery science, all standards, all kids. But our vision to include that parent voice was, back one more, no worries, right here is all kids can do science, really focusing on the doing. So on the next slide, this is sort of mystery science on a page. Here's what it looks like. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see kind of the interface, the digital interface, and lessons are clearly laid out for teachers. The graphics are super engaging and they use real-life visuals. Mystery Science slogan is open and go lessons that inspire kids to love science. It is computer-based. They use storytelling and real-life visuals to keep students engaged and interested. The lessons are flexible, Hands-on activities are built into the program. And then last, of course, is scored the highest on the 3D rubric. On the bottom left-hand corner is the cast of character. This is Mystery Doug. He's the nowadays version equivalent to Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's just the science guy. And then below that is a message from one of our kinder students. When asked what was your very favorite part of this whole entire school year, he wrote Mystery Doug Science.
Mm.
Awesome?
I think it's bug science.
All right. But don't take it from me. Take it from Ms. McNelly, our expert kindergarten teacher. She's going to kind of talk to you more in detail about her experience in the classroom.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is Michelle McNelly, and I teach kindergarten out of Washington. I was fortunate enough to be a member of this team and had the privilege of piloting mystery science in my classroom. And so today I just wanted to share a classroom experience with you. And I'm actually going to touch on the Idaho content standard listed above, that students who demonstrate understanding can ask questions to obtain information about the purpose of weather forecasting, to prepare for and respond to local weather. And so, as mentioned, mystery science does cover all of those Idaho content standards, and this happened to fall under something called wild weather. And the lesson I wanted to discuss is lesson 2, which was wind and storms. And one thing about being video-based, it just so happened that I did this lesson on a lovely sunny day, and the video piece really brought the storm to life in our classroom. And so that component has been so valuable with mystery science. We can experience the desert. We can experience underwater with a shark. I mean, just opportunities that the video component provides. So when this lesson began, we were just able to view a storm rolling in. And then the question to students was, have you ever watched a storm? And one thing that mystery science does a lovely job with is allowing opportunities for children to discuss. So the video paused. There was an opportunity for children to turn and discuss with their classmates. Gosh, you know, what did you notice when you watched that storm? Following the discussion, the video came back on again, and then we had lovely Doug talk to us about different things that happen within a storm, but really our focus was on wind and how you might not know this, but if you really looked at the video, did you notice how the wind increases, how the temperature changes when a big storm rolls in? So from there, at that point, we then went on to the hands-on activity. And I must say that, you know, as a kindergarten teacher, it's always very important to me that activities are developmentally appropriate. And I do find that mystery science offers developmentally appropriate and engaging activities. I teach at a grade level that if it's not engaging, I'm gonna know. You know, it just, so from then we became our own weather watchers, and we created something called a breeze buddy, which is, it's a better name for a windsock, in which we had an opportunity to create a tool where we could actually observe the wind at home. And a lot of vocabulary was then brought in where we talked about a gentle breeze or a strong wind, and we held our breeze buddy and demonstrated a gentle breeze as well as a strong wind. That was then, children had an opportunity to bring those home with them and become weather watchers at home. And then mine was hung on a tree outside where every day we discussed when the weather reporter in our classroom mentioned wind, we then went a little further in what kind of wind was blowing. One thing that I really love about mystery science as well is that it uses simple what I would call household items. So I really feel like it's really showing children that we can observe the weather simply by using, we had paper, we had crepe paper, that simple household objects. So you don't have to have a Bunsen burner and beakers to be a scientist. We can do a lot of these experiments just with things from home. And I also like that being a computer-based program, they're constantly adding new materials. So weekly, we receive new mini lessons, and mini lessons might address something like, why does a snake shed its skin? And they're just short lessons that are, K-5. So they provide that, and also looking at the needs of districts as well as far as writing, that they are also incorporating a scientific writing piece that's to come as well. So just on behalf of my students as well as myself, I really felt like this was an engaging program, and whenever we were done with the mystery science, at least in kindergarten, we all clapped and said, hooray for Doug. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and next is Ms. Evans. Speak about her experience in third grade mystery science.
So I'm the third grade teacher at Southside, and I actually had a student teacher this year, and mystery science was great because it was very easy for her to access it, teach the lesson. Again, the supplies, if you didn't have them with the science kit, they were like readily available in your classroom. The kids were 100% engaged because they got the hands-on, they got to do it. Mystery science includes reading pieces with it also, so you've got the language arts piece of it, they are incorporating the writing with it, and a lot of times there's the math component also with measurement and stuff that the kids are doing. So they're really doing not just science, but they're doing the language arts, they're doing the math and everything. And just the kids, every time they would ask, like, are we doing mystery science today? Are we doing science today? And they were just really super excited to do science.
That's great.
All right, so to end on mystery science, the last slide shows you, the next one, an example from 5th grade where students were developing a model to describe the movement of matter among plants and animals and decomposers. And so the first image on the left was a game called Eat or Be Eaten. You can imagine how fun that would be to play in a 5th grade classroom. In the middle there is an experiment called the mold terrarium. And it was during that experiment that they realized the importance of a decomposer so they could modify this biosphere and have something break down all that garbage that piled up over time. So you can see through a variety of fun and engaging activities that really students can do science. What we love about mystery science too is because the materials are readily accessible, you can do science at home. And so a lot of kids will do it at school and they want to just run right home and do the same experiment and share it with their families because the materials are available at home too. All right, so moving on. So next, mystery science, how can we enhance that? What if our students themselves became mystery Doug? And what if they themselves were the real scientists, right? That then were writing their own questions and their own investigations and using real science materials like the Petri dish and the pipettes. What would that look like? Turns out it looks a whole lot like building blocks. So again, through a process of collaborative scoring, our entire team reached 100% consensus around the adoption of one kit from Carolina Biological. So next slide, what's the goal here? All students, all kids can now be scientists. A little different than can do science. The next slide, Carolina on a page. So this program comes as a kit. So in the picture there, you can see that green kit. It comes with all the science materials ready to go. The safety goggles, the Petri dishes, the pipettes, everything you need to teach that comprehensive kit's included, including a copy of what is the reader, the textbook for students. These are more in-depth science investigations where students, as scientists, develop their own wonderings and investigations. They collect and present their own data from their experiments and then share those collaboratively with their classmates. Again, students get to use real science materials, things that you don't necessarily find at home, but that a real scientist is going to use. The lessons still help meet our constraint with time, 30-minute lessons, and again, this program scored of the kit-based programs highest using our 3D state rubric. But don't take it from me, because our expert, Mrs. Travers, is going to talk to you about her experience with Carolina in her second grade classroom.
So this was so exciting. This was the highlight of fourth quarter for real. Can you show the next slide first and then come back to that one? So we were exploring, we were digging deep. The best part is that there were diverse academic ranges and everyone was fully activated. They were digging, they were learning, if there was a piece of information that was too high for them to read, their neighbors were reading it to them. There was just so much fun. Our phenomenon was about the earth and how it was constantly is changing. It can change very slowly, like glacial erosion, or it can change very quickly, like floods, volcanoes. So here the kids are actually, they have a tray of sand and they're working through different methods of erosion. They have workbooks. The Carolina Biological comes with a really extensive online book that you can print documents off of. I happened to staple them together so the kids had a science notebook for these activities. The tasks were so rich. There were observations, investigations. We did investigations every day. I had to change their mindset because, like parents at home, are you doing experiments? What about experiments? The big thing was, we want experiments. And really, they're investigations. We're digging deep so that they could come up with all these great questions. Predictions, we graphed, we analyzed. We used 5th grade science words because we analyzed, we graphed our data, we developed claims based on our experiences. And so it was so fun. It was just so fun.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the last slide on Carolina is this one. I think it captures the essence here the best. Students get to work like real scientists. They're actively collaborating with peers, conducting hands-on investigations, collecting and analyzing data, recording their notes, and sharing their observations. So up next is Casey to talk about our community input.
Okay, so the next step in the process is inviting community in, and that's one of the steps that we do, and that you need to do with the curriculum process. And so what we did is we set up, and you can see in the front, we had our Carolina set up. In the back of the computers, we had stations set up so patrons and parents could come in and look at Mystery Science and interact with Mystery Doug and check it all out. We did in this process, we had 2 opportunities. We had an evening opportunity and then we had a morning opportunity, trying to do 2 different things so people could come in, whether they're available at night or available in the morning. In addition to that, we advertised. We did our best to advertise through Facebook. We advertised through, where else did we go? The district website, and of course a press release as well. So we advertised a few different places. We gathered community feedback. We had 2 community members that showed up, which was 2 more than Priest River did. So and we did get some information from them and some input. So first of all, I'll read this to you. The videos in Mystery Science are engaging and a good length for keeping a student's attention. Pauses for discussion are a good way to have teacher-student interaction. Activities promote students working together. Another patron, second patron, said, I love the idea that this curriculum presents material both via technology as well as in an experiential manner. And then they also said, I would love to see coordination and collaboration with science-oriented agencies and organizations in the community. And that was something that I think is pretty exciting to think about. We also got a second additional comment, which said, I like the kit idea and the added dimension of more hands-on, seeing how things work rather than just theory. So one of our patrons did mention that they would love to see this communicated out more and a little bit a deeper opportunity to come in and take a look. And we just want to say that that is open. We would love to have community members, if they are interested, they can come and check this out. So we are open to that for sure. So if people have further interest and want to see this more.
At the district office level?
At the district office, yeah, okay. We would definitely open that up and let people check out the rest of the mystery science, check out the rest of Carolina, if they do not have an opportunity to do so.
Okay.
That is okay. Okay. And then go ahead to the next slide. So the next part then is that recommendation that we make to our amazing team to the board, and go ahead and go to the next one. So there's the two, the first one is of course Carolina Biological. And Carolina Biological is that hands-on kit. It was used or adopted also by Priest River. And so Priest River has that kit as well. We also are recommending the mystery science, and that is used in over 50 different districts in our state. So both these recommendations I think are pretty exciting. This team did an incredible job of going through and putting those to head, and then of course our ability to come to you with any recommendations.
Okay. So we wanted to share costs. On the next slide, we'll show you the breakdown. Mystery science, all the licensing and all the materials for the teacher come in at just over $25,000. So it's a fairly affordable way to hit all standards that are top K-5. The teachers and the parents asked this would be a one-time only purchase. The $30,000 is the materials packs. So all the things would come in a box for kindergarten, the hand lenses, the erasers, the pencils, the write-ups, the things you need to do those quick hands-on lessons, the paper that Mrs. McNally was talking about. Our parents on the committee actually said they would love for us to buy that one time. They want to have a picture and an inventory list of what comes in those, and then they think they can refill those for us through volunteers at local businesses. So that was the brainchild of the incredible parents on our committee and that notion of community outreach. They felt that was worth a one-time purchase, and then we would have a model that we could ongoing refill each summer. Mm-hmm. And then Carolina Biological, that is just the one kit per grade level. And again, we would own the teacher materials, we would own the student journals, the pages that we would need. The materials come with, but we think ongoing we can fill those materials. So we love the hybrid notion. It was the genius of this team, and we think that we can do it fairly affordably. And we would love to end just by having you hear from parents. So I'd love to introduce Liz.
So here's a variety of what parents said, but Chair Lewis, trustees, Superintendent Albertson, future Superintendent Dr. Meyer, I just have to say it was a total pleasure and blast to be let in behind the scenes and see how absolutely thoughtful, intentional, and like truly rigorous they were with the process with each other. When we asked questions as parents, they had answers like that. They had thought through this so much. And I think for the betterment of our communities and the school district serves our future citizens, I am so excited because if you think about it, this thing wasn't invented in 2006, right? Technology wasn't even around. And the solution that they've come up with, really created over a very rigorous process, is the best of technology, extending inquiry, and all of the local assets that we have to really bring it alive. So I think that from a parent perspective, I'm super, super excited. I'm also super grateful for the really, really critical and rigorous process that gives you ample points of evidence of why this is what our kids need to be able to question, notice, wonder, extend and deepen thinking about our place for the betterment and the future of our community, if that makes sense. So I know that sounds a little, but if you think about what we're asking kids to do each and every day, and as trustees, that, as I understand it, that's your role, right? Is to like try your best to figure out what is the best for our community, right? Best for the future citizens. I am so stoked to know now if you adopt this recommendation, that at least for maybe it will have to be 16 years until we do this again, but the use of public funds, even if it is only 16 years, or it is 16 full years, I think we're gonna have amazing outputs from it. It's just what I think as a parent. So it was an honor to help. I really highly recommend any parent get involved, because getting to see behind the scenes what happens is like truly humbling and amazing. These folks are insanely passionate about what they do. They bring these opportunities to our kids, and they're highly like, you know, reflective and collaborative with each other. So it's super cool to just have been.
Thank you. So thank you. That's what we prepared tonight, knowing you had a packed agenda, but I know anyone on the team would be happy to field any other questions you have from us.
Yeah, so do we have questions? All of you have had this kind of synopsis in the packet, including the recommendation as it's outlined with the costs and a proposed motion. So right now, if you have questions for the team, this would be your opportunity.
I had a few.
Yeah.
Is that, I can go?
Yes.
All right. So if I'm not mistaken, you had 2 curriculums each, right? The computer-based one, you had 2, and then 2, okay. And then are there textbooks or workbooks that go along with the computer-based one? I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't know if.
Yeah, not any ongoing cost of a workbook. Mystery Science has all those materials in print form, which can be, again, viewed through any patron who wants to come look, and also printed out and kind of modified into like a student journal. And yes, those come also in Carolina, both the teacher's guide, or a traditional teacher's guide, and a student journal and the reading books, which will be used and placed out.
Yeah, I think you had one of those, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And just to add that Mystery Science is easily accessible through Google Classroom. So I know like when we had the pandemic and we had to shut down, it was really easy for me to just keep incorporating that through Google Classroom to my students too.
Okay.
And the Carolina stuff is reusable?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so we'll have some ongoing replacements for one-time purchase, and we can fill most of that through our local community.
Yep. Okay. Are there other trustee questions? I appreciate hearing so thoroughly the process you went through for this. It is similar to all curriculum adoptions, that there's a team set up and that there is a rubric and a way to actually evaluate content. I will entertain a motion to approve this science curriculum adoption.
I'll make a motion to approve the science curriculum adoption as presented.
Both the Carolina Biological and the Mystery Science for K-5. Both science, yeah.
Yes.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there other discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Thank you for your work, team.
Well done.
Good job. We would like to invite our Chief Financial Officer, Lisa Halls, up for budget conversation, budget presentation. These are sort of quicker. Yes. I don't know. Cookie break, does anyone need something?
Is this the same as what is in the PDF?
It is. Sometimes they're like,
Got that?
got it. Okay.
Yep, good.
We haven't, but I'll take a written copy for. It's if you want to make any notes on it and you don't have Lonnie's little handwriting pen. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to give an overview of the budget proposal for fiscal year 22-23. And the fiscal cycle is July 1st of 2022 to June 30th of 2023. I'm going to thank Kelly Fisher for the photographs in the
Very nice job.
So this budget document is meant to give just pertinent contact information, where board meetings are held, our website. What it does not include are what we submit to the State Department of Education, which is all just general ledger account numbers and figures. This is meant to be a summary document that a stakeholder could pick up and glean the pertinent financial overview of our school district, eliminating school district lexicon. And I'm going to move through this relatively quickly and highlight the high points.
Mm-hmm.
So the document tells you our schools, it gives you our central office administrators and my team, the fiscal accountability team. It gives you the contacts for each school administrator, and then under a very short paragraph in the district overview, it shares that this would be a $49.8 million budget that includes about 560 full-time employees. We are the 25th largest in terms of student count district in the state of Idaho, with about 3,825 students, with the major fund, which is called the general fund, of $40.9 million, and a voter-approved indefinite term supplemental levy of $12.7 million. The State Department of Education data for fiscal year 21, so last fiscal year, ranked us in terms of per pupil spending 61st in the state with $9,628. And then the other funds, they're called special revenue funds, mainly include federal dollars, and that would be $8.9 million. It gives you a visual overview of the structure of the school district, and then I'll spend the majority of the evening talking to the budget summary method. So there are really four factors that developed for structure of the budget. So the first is our, as I mentioned, our indefinite term local property tax levy that was voter approved in November of 2019. It's a fixed amount of $12,700,000 per year and will represent 31.1% of our major operational funds revenues for fiscal year 23. What is significant is that it's a drop from fiscal year 22 of 5.1%, and that's because it's a fixed amount. And as we, and that trajectory will continue. And the district, right, as I've gone through quite at length in our March board meeting, has strategically planned for that type of budget structure.
Yes.
So why is it dropping? It's because in terms of percentage, at a fixed dollar amount of $12.7 million, as the overall budget increases, of course, the numerator gets smaller and the denominator is larger, so the percentage drops. That's also, for those of you that are property owners here and have received your assessed valuation, which is required under
Idaho, under the structure of the Idaho Constitution. This year, our property tax levy rate is 0.00183, which means for every 100,000 of net taxable value for a property owner, they're paying $183 to support the indefinite term supplemental levy. And that's based on the current assessed value of all the property in our district at $6.95 billion. Now, every year I work with the assessor to understand what's happened with property values as the tax notices are released, and I can share with you that the assessor on average has shared with me that the residential property in Bonner County went up 33%, and for the commercial property, 23%. And I could just sort of project that our property tax rate will drop to probably about 0.00143 or $143 per net taxable value. So down from 183. So why is that? That's because, let's just say, blending the residential and the commercial, that all the property went up on average by 28%. That brings it almost to $9 billion. So we have this fixed dollar amount of $12.7 million. Instead of dividing it by 6.9 billion this year, we're going to be dividing it by about $9 billion.
Yeah.
The next factor that is important is trying to project every year what our state of Idaho's revenues will be and what ultimately the legislature will appropriate for K-12, which is the largest agency budget in the state. And then also, how would the federal infusion of COVID relief dollars affect Idaho or just the whole sort of continuing pandemic? So what's most notable, and we shared this last year, is that Idaho's economic performance since the pandemic started has outpaced basically every other state in the nation, and that Idaho really is awash with cash right now. And with that, or conflated with that, still hundreds of millions of dollars of federal aid flowed to all states, including Idaho. And as the legislative session clicked on in months, those revenue projections only increased. So you saw the governor open the session with a revenue forecast, and then the Economic Outlook and Assessment Committee come in above his forecast, and then ultimately the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, which does all the agency budget setting, come in with an even higher appropriation forecast. So the third factor is the federal relief dollars, and for us, for fiscal year 23, we will be spending the third and final package, which is called ESSER, or known as ARPA. And I really can't discuss fiscal year 23's budget, or fiscal year 22's budget, or even fiscal year 24's budget without highlighting how pivotal these ESSER dollars are to the very structure of it. And equally significant for the long-term planning of the district is how the ESSER dollars facilitate increasing our general fund reserves. And this has been the strategy right out of the gate. When we passed our indefinite term supplemental levy, we knew it was going to be a fixed amount, and that we wanted to plan and to allow the district to operate for many fiscal cycles under a fixed amount.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth factor in sculpting this budget was what would our student enrollment be? This year, it bumped back up. We lost hundreds of students really in the first year of the pandemic, and then what was the state of Idaho legislature going to do in terms of funding school districts either on average daily attendance, which is what is in statute, or would they put into statute funding school districts on enrollment? which has been now a long legislative policy plank and discussion that has reached no resolution. Ultimately, the legislature did recommend funding on enrollment, and the governor vetoed that at the end of the session. But that is then subsequently followed by a state board temporary rule for all of fiscal year 23 to pay school districts funding us on enrollment, which brings in, for our school district alone, an additional $1.2 million. The other thing I just would mention in terms of the on the legislative level is the increase in appropriation from this fiscal year to next fiscal year for the K-12 budget is 11.3%. And I've been in this position 18 years, and that's certainly the largest percentage increase in my tenure. Another very important thing about the structure of this budget is addressing our chronic labor shortages and the astronomical housing prices here locally and even in the state of Idaho, and how that is acutely affecting our hiring pools and applicant pools. And as we work through negotiations with the teachers union and have presented to you over the last few months, depending on the category of staff in the district, staff will receive between a 5 to a 14% increase. And the 14% increase is concentrated in the lowest paid categories of staff in our district, what we call the classified staff. Then finally, I would point out that this budget also includes some capital expenditures in our general fund, about $663,000, and out of our ESSER $3, about $1.7 million. And those are, and our ESSER dollars would be $1 million, and then we have some bus acquisition fund, which is another, I think it's about another $500,000. So the capital expenses are concentrated in bus acquisition. We are building a child nutrition warehouse and upgrading that facility. That cost of that is $424,000. And we have before us tonight recommendations for about $930,000 of HVAC upgrades.
Yep.
This is just shows you the history of our enrollment in our school district. We became a school district in July of '99. This is out of the State Department of Education's material. Every school district in the state reports their annual audit under code to the State Department of Education in a very specific format, and you can, this is our report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, and you could compare that to any other district you're in the state you're interested in. This is our budget hearing notice. This is required by law for all school districts in a very specific format, and in the fourth column is the proposed budget before you tonight, and I would just highlight that under the beginning balances, we are going to be using about $724,000 of what's called fund balance or reserves, and that is money, $424,000 we've transferred out of our child nutrition fund in the fiscal year closing of 21, and because of the USDA's free lunch and free breakfast program, the reimbursements were much higher to the school districts, and we are using the excess revenue to improve the child nutrition warehouse. And the other $300,000 is from reserve money and our supplemental levy. The past two fiscal cycles, we've had science adoption as a line item, and because of an inability to hire subs during COVID, all of that money is now going to be budgeted in fiscal year '23. And then you'll see the big jump in state revenue. This over 11%. So we will be anticipated collecting about $26.7 million in state revenue. And then in the far right column are all the other funds, the 8th column, and the big impact there, almost $9 million, is the expenditures we will incur through our ARPA ESSER 3 dollars. Then the only other thing I really want to say is that on the very final page of the budget document, we as a school district, since we've had a voter approved supplemental levy and now an indefinite term supplemental levy as of July 1st of 21, I've always broken out exactly how we are spending the dollars. That's not required under code. And when we report to the state, it must be included in what's called the general fund. So this isn't on the last page. In addition, it's just a detailed breakdown of how we are anticipating spending our indefinite term supplemental levy. This is an action item. Under code, it requires that the board make a motion to approve the fiscal year 22-23 budget. And this budget will be, if approved, posted on our district website. That concludes my prepared remarks.
Thank you, CFO Halls. We have had a chance to look at this. We've had this in our packet since the 10th, but additionally, we've had multiple conversations on these more specific, deeper dives since March. As referenced, even earlier than that, I think all our updates have included some content budget-wise. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the budget as you've just heard presented tonight.
I make a motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 22-23 as presented.
Second.
That's moved and seconded. Are there discussion? Sorry.
My only
Blank out.
question is, does this pass, does it have to be unanimous or majority?
Majority.
Okay. And then, yeah, so just for the record, like I've said from day one, I don't approve of any of the spending of the ESSER or ARPA dollars. I don't think that we should budget that way. And I've already been on record for that. So that's why I was asking.
Absolutely.
Because
Amen.
how I vote. I want it to pass
Exactly.
because I feel like people need to be paid and all of that is good, but I just don't think that we should be taking the money that way.
Duly noted. Are there other discussion elements out of the budget? Okay. I will call for all those who approve. Sorry.
Aye.
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 Not approved.
Opposed?
Opposed.
No.
Thank you. That motion passes. Sorry, I must be a little low on blood sugar. It's going to get interesting as we keep going. Thank you very much for the presentation. Oh yeah, no, I need the cowboy ones. Thank you very much. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this budget going forward. And now we just have a group of requests for bids. These have been discussed previously, well, some of them as we get a little deeper in. Every year we do a request for bid for dairy products. I open it up for a motion. You've had a chance to look over these proposals.
I would like to move that we approve.
Give permission to go out to bid for dairy products.
Yep. I move to give permission to go to bid for dairy products for the 2022-2023 school year.
A second.
That's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. That motion passes.
I will do the next one.
Thank you.
I make a motion that we move to request to bid for 3 new 71 passenger type C school buses.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. That motion passes. We have a third request for bid.
I make a
No,
motion
yeah, for buses, fuel.
that we approve to go to bid for bus and sport vehicle fuel.
I'll second.
That is moved and seconded. Request for bid. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. So, request to bid.
I would like to make a motion that we approve going to bid for heating fuel and snow removal.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. So now we have a request permission to surplus, and do you have anything to present other than what's in our document?
No, I don't, but I would make myself available to answer any questions you have.
So I'll entertain a motion on that.
I make a motion that we approve the surplus of tractor tires and generator.
Second.
You guys understand what we're doing here? Equipment not needed, putting it back on. Okay.
Good to go.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. We have an approval of bid award for HVAC project, the package number 1. And I will invite our facilities director, Matt Deal, to present this to us.
Is that in our packet?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So,
Just here.
It's the paper copy. Yeah.
we requested to hire architects to design work. We proved that. We designed the projects. We originally went out to bid for them. I reported back to you that we didn't receive bids on the bulk of the work due to timelines. We separated certain projects, lengthened the timelines of completion, and this first bid package 1 is really a big piece of the greatest needs of ventilation improvements. It's the gymnasium at Southside Elementary, Washington Elementary, about 7 classrooms, Lake Pondere High School, the main building, currently has no fresh air ventilation. It would fix that with a new ventilation system in. The gymnasium and about six rooms at Northside Elementary would get new ventilation. And updating the computer controls that control the ventilation and heat in those buildings. So we were really pleased. You know, honestly, the bid's higher than what we originally cost estimated over a year ago. But I think we all understand that that could be realistic. This particular bid package definitely it addresses all the rooms that have like no fresh air, and so I feel pretty good if we're able to do this work. Okay. So we've received 1 bid from a highly qualified contractor out of Hayden, Metalcraft Mechanical, in the amount of $742,400. There's other costs. You know, we're already into this for engineering, and then we always budget for contingency. So that's when CFO Howells mentioned a higher number than what you're seeing here. That's what she's referring to. Engineering plus some contingency that brings us to that $930-ish thousand. We have $1 million set aside.
Okay. I will entertain a motion on this item.
I make a motion to award bid to Metalcraft Mechanical LLC ventilation upgrades as per bid package number 1.
Second.
That's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or further questions for Facilities Director?
This work would be, target completion is by August of next year.
23.
Yeah.
A lot of this equipment's 25 weeks out.
Yeah.
That's not to say we won't be able to get some of it done ahead of time.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
That motion passes. We will hear a approval of bid award for package number 3. We don't have that written in front of us.
We don't have that written because I don't have as good news to share on that. We did receive 2 bids. They were each around $500,000. It would take us over the amount of budget we have for the project. They also do happen to be projects that aren't of as great a need as the projects in bid package 1. It would have been nice to get them done, but I don't have a recommendation for you.
So we'll table that portion of the project. At this time, we will not be hearing a motion on that bid. So now we have approval of a quote for Sandpoint Middle School and Northside Elementary, and this is the special ed.
Yep, some small remodels. So again, that was part of the big bid process, and I talked to you about that. A few months ago. We carved those off of the big ventilation project bids and solicited quotation for those, and that was able to legally be done because it's a smaller amount of money and it's local funds. We got a quotation of about $99,000 for the middle school project and $43,253 for the Northside Elementary School project. The budget that Dr. Jansen has set aside for this is $100,000, and she had to step out tonight, but she was texting back and forth. Do I need to stay? I said, I don't think so. I think we got this.
Okay.
She would like to do the small office remodel at Northside Elementary, and we have what I feel like is a good quote from Garden Enterprises. They also happen to be doing some other work for us in the district. They're doing the locker rooms at the high school and the child nutrition. So they're in the community during work now. That might be why they can efficiently take this on.
Right. Cool. So I will just draw your attention to the fact that this is a approval of a proposal just on the special education therapy room at Northside Elementary. So I'll hear a motion on
and
that.
And it's locally funded.
And locally funded. Oh, there. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept the proposal from Darden Enterprises, Inc. in the amount of...
Proposed motion.
That's what I'm reading.
$43,250.
I make a motion to accept the proposal from Darden Enterprises, Inc. in the amount of $43,253 for the remodel of the special education therapy room at Northside Elementary School.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion passes.
That's all I had.
That's all I have you on for. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Albertson for the approval of district calendars. You have those in your packet.
So you've had the 22-23 next year and the 23-24 calendars. There is nothing unusual about those. Just we need to bring those in front of you for approval each year. I'll entertain any questions, but don't think you will see anything unusual about these calendars.
Has everyone had a chance to peruse these and compare them with your home calendar?
Yeah.
Yeah, since I planned that far out.
Yeah. I will entertain a motion to approve. Now, we have 3 calendars here. Do we approve them each individually?
Just the years. So approval of district calendars for 22-23 and 23-24 as on the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the district calendars for 22-23 and 23-24.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any other discussion or questions?
No, ma'am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. So now I'm going to ask for a little
Yes.
clarity on the permission to use LPOSD equipment for
Right,
summer
so
football.
safety equipment for football to be used outside of the Idaho High School Activity Association's season needs board approval. We have both Clark Fork High School, who wants to use the equipment to attend a football camp at Montana Tech, and Sandpoint High School asking permission to use the equipment in a camp in July. And so we just need to make sure both schools are included in the motion.
And historical precedents, we see this yearly,
Correct.
just in case you're wondering about that. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve permission of the use of LPOSD equipment for summer football competitions for both Sandpoint High School and
Clark Fork.
Or Clark Fork?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. We have a second reading of a policy, and I will invite our Federal Programs Director, Casey McLaughlin.
Yeah, it's just policy 2420, our Title I family engagement policy. This is every year we have to approve it, and there is really no significant change. It's just putting LPOSD in
The acronym.
right behind Lake Monterey School District. So that is it. The rest of it is all the same. So
Given the nature of this adjustment, I will now entertain a motion to approve it.
I make a motion to adopt the revisions to Board Policy 2420, Title I, Family Engagement.
I'll second that.
Yes, you will.
It's moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. So, whew, buzz through those. We have announcements. I'll start with you.
I only have one announcement. June is School Board Member Appreciation Month, and you should have a card in front of you if you have not opened that. And I just want to let you know that I do appreciate your time, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to take the announcement floor right back to say that this is our final meeting with Superintendent Albertson at the helm. It has been a wild ride over the last 3 years, but you've had the complete support of this board, of the district, of the administration, the entire community throughout all of it. I have really been impressed with your leadership, and you've made the hard decisions. We just are really grateful for your service here and what you've accomplished.
Thank
And
you.
I know you're going to miss these meetings, so you're welcome to come
We can have them at your
anytime.
house.
Take them to the ranch.
Yes, well, I'm at the ranch.
I appreciate the kind words. It's my honor to serve the community, and thank you for having the trust in me. So,
Absolutely.
36
great.
years.
36 total
36.
years.
So,
I'm just going to stand up for time. Thank you.
make me feel old.
Cookie, do you want to?
Oh, no, you're not old yet, Tom.
Are there, everybody here, administrators, are there announcements?
I have an announcement. The end of the year went great, with the exception of two things. I lost 2 teachers, and it's really hard to fill positions. So I'm looking for a science teacher, all high school sciences, and a new CTE teacher who NIC got hold of. And so if anybody knows any of those kind of people, send them my way, please.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. And, oh,
I was just going to say, does the CTE teacher have to be certified?
There's a process.
There is some alternate authorization that can happen. So yeah, yep.
So, yes and no.
I'll keep moving around the room and you can follow up later. Yes.
Oh, I have 1 minute of gratitude. Today is the first official day of break for our certified teaching staff, and guess what was happening at the district office? 9 K2 teachers came for a paid few hours to start looking at those new state standards for the English language arts side of the house, looking at our instructional materials, realigning, renumbering, looking at their assessments, looking at our report cards. So, you know, I love a great teaching and learning, but our staff jumped right in today to help us be prepared for fall. So grades 3 and 4, small group will come together tomorrow, and then 5 and 6 the next day. So
Cool.
thank you so much
Great.
for the support today and always.
Great. Thank you. Anyone?
Just gratitude for ventilation and a new special ed classroom. It's always a fantastic thing, and just my work with you and superintendent.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right.
Executive session.
We have to, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
I make a motion to move into executive session as provided for in Idaho Code Title 74, Section 206, subsection 1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, or public school student, to consider records that are exempt from disclosure as provided in Chapter 1, Title 74, Idaho Code.
You did well. I second that.
Seconded. Moved and seconded. So we'll do a roll call.
Roll call vote. Trustee Decker.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Yes.
Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Williams.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Motion passes.
Motion passes. So we are meeting here.
So Sheriff Wheeler and Chief Kuhn, if you guys could
Yep.
join us in executive session right up here.
And we have
And-
to quickly dismiss
Happy
everyone.
retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.